Hey everyone, I'm Isaac and welcome back to Isaac Reviews 2024. It's finally here. After waiting for a few months, my most anticipated movie of the year is out in theaters, and that movie is DreamWorks' The Wild Robot. In recent years, franchises have been all the rage in Hollywood, and that certainly applies to animation. I mean, they're almost certain to turn a profit if their predecessor was well liked, and with how poorly the medium of animation has been treated nowadays by major studios like Disney and Warner Brothers, sequels have been more and more of a safe bet for a quick buck, even if their existence was completely unnecessary. And DreamWorks has been no exception. So far this decade, they've released only 3 films that weren't sequels, with only one of them not being an adaptation of a book. In the case of The Wild Robot, it's an adaptation of the book of the same name by popular children's author Peter Brown. I read it a while back and wow, it is a damn good book. It has a simple yet unique art style, it's a compelling and endearing story about found family and learning to discover who you truly are, it's incredibly emotional, and it's all around a great read from start to finish. And it seems like it was good enough for DreamWorks to adapt it into a feature film with veteran employee Chris Sanders taking charge as the director. Now, it's been a little over a decade since Sanders' last collaboration with the studio, and before then, he also co-directed the first How to Train Your Dragon for DreamWorks and Lilo and Stitch for Disney, on top of serving in the animation and story department for several other films throughout the 90s and 2000s. So in addition to it not being tied to a franchise, The Wild Robot had a seasoned veteran at the helm. That already had my curiosity, but once we got the trailer, it had my attention. The animation was beautiful, it looked like it was going to be faithful to the source material, and it had a talented cast and crew bringing it to life. But there was also something kinda sad about this movie and what it means for DreamWorks' upcoming releases. In case you didn't know, The Wild Robot is the last film to have been animated entirely in-house by DreamWorks themselves. Starting in 2025, they'll be relying a lot more on other studios for their visuals, such as Jellyfish Pictures, Mikros Animation, DNEG, and Sony Imageworks. I'd assume this is supposed to be a cost-cutting measure, as that's been the case with a lot of other major animated films with animation outsourced to countries like the UK and Canada, and judging by how DreamWorks' more recent films have costed significantly less than before they were bought by Universal, it was only a matter of time before they'd fully commit to this method. It's definitely unfortunate that now the only major studios that still do their animation in-house are the ones owned by Disney, and even that might change since they now have a studio in Canada, but it's nice that DreamWorks' last time doing all their own animation is for one of their most ambitious projects yet. And it seems like all that ambition paid off, as the reviews were absolutely glowing. Some even said it was the studio's best film to date. And I was like, really? This was able to be better than The Prince of Egypt, Shrek 2, the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish combined? Yeah, you're right, it probably is. So September 27th rolled around and Universal finally released the film for the world to see. And by the world, I mean the US and Canada, since it doesn't come out in Japan until a day after I turn 18. But at least the military-based theaters were playing it, so my parents and I saw it that way, and has its reception so far been warranted? Yes, absolutely. It is amazing. It starts with a shipping vessel containing several intelligent robots called Rosms crashing into a remote island. All of them are destroyed except for Unit 7134. This robot, who's referred to as Roz, is stranded on this island populated entirely by wild animals. She begins learning how to adapt to this foreign environment to the point where she processes the animals' language enough to communicate with them. She eventually finds herself having to raise an orphaned gosling who she names Brightbill with the help of a few other animals throughout the island. All the while, the company that made her is trying to get her back from the island even as it becomes her new home. While it does take some creative liberties in the writing, the film retains a very similar story to the original book. It's a story about a character being dropped into a completely foreign environment where they're initially met with uncertainty and hostility, but through their unrelenting compassion and resourcefulness, they become just as important to the island's ecosystem as any of the other animals that live there. And this is exemplified through their role as the surrogate mother of Brightbill, a runt gosling whose family was killed in an accident before he was born. It makes for some great development for both of the characters as they learn what it truly means to love someone and the lengths you'd go to protect them. This becomes more apparent as Brightbill matures into a goose and, like Roz, still struggles to fit in. He's not good at swimming or flying, he gets bullied, and he's struggled to truly appreciate Roz as his parental figure. Hell, this movie actually does a good job executing its liar revealed and third act breakup scene. As much as these sort of scenes tend to be a massive eye roller with how overdone they are, it actually works here to improve the drama and the relationship between both characters. And the drama in general is extremely effective here. I'll admit that there were a couple points that got me really choked up, especially as the film progresses and the character arcs of Roz and Brightbill start to come full circle. The rest of the characters are great as well, especially the two other leads, Brightbill and Fink. I've already talked about the former and how his relationship with Roz is at the heart of the story, but Fink also manages to provide some solid humor as well as his own development where he learns to have a heart of his own thanks to Roz, since he was one of the first animals to befriend the robot. I also want to give some credit to the voice actors as they really help to sell the emotions of these characters, and the standout would have to be Lupita Nyong'o as the title wild robot herself. Apparently, her voice was inspired by Siri and those AI text-to-speech voices on TikTok, but it becomes more human as the film progresses. And as her voice becomes more human, so does her character, as she becomes one with the animals that she's been living amongst for so long. The rest of the cast was also excellent, especially Pedro Pascal as Fink, Kit Connor as Brightbill, and Catherine O'Hara as the possum mother Pinktail. Even the actors with smaller roles like Bill Nighy, Matt Berry, Ving Rhames, and Stephanie Hsu did a great job bringing their respective characters to life. However, if there's one extremely small thing I wish the movie could have done better, it would be with the villain, Vantra. They're a solid antagonist and a worthy opponent to our characters, but they don't really have a major impact on the story until the last 20 or so minutes, so I do kinda wish that there was more for them to do with their role as the villain. This doesn't affect the quality of the film at all, as it's otherwise extremely well made, but compared to some of the other villains we've gotten from DreamWorks, Vantra could have been handled better. Other than that, the rest of The Wild Robot is fantastic. It's well written, well paced, emotionally impactful, surprisingly really funny, and it has a cast of memorable characters. And I haven't even touched upon the animation yet, so I guess now's as good a time to talk about it as any because this is a beautiful looking film. It builds upon the blending of 2D and 3D that we saw in The Bad Guys and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, where the animation is given the look of a painting, with the main inspirations being the Disney Golden Age and the works of Hayao Miyazaki. And the end result is one of the best looking films DreamWorks has done to date. The designs are charming, the character animation is extremely fluid and full of energy, the backgrounds are stunning to look at, the cinematography is gorgeous, and the score is excellent. It's actually Chris Bowers' first time scoring a fully animated feature, and he did a great job capturing the mood of the film through the music, where it's both epic and bombastic, but also wondrous and contemplative, perfectly capturing the mood of the film and the emotions of the characters. All the while, the filmmaking put on display is truly admirable, where I could tell that the crew involved was super passionate about their craft. Chris Sanders is at his apex with some great direction on his part, but I still gotta hand it to the people at DreamWorks who brought The Wild Robot to life. I'm gonna be honest for a second, DreamWorks has always been inconsistent in terms of their quality, and I've always found that sort of fascinating. They've made some genuine masterpieces that tell unforgettable stories and transcend the medium of animation as a whole, but for every one of those movies, they also make a lot of flat-out garbage that only serves to further the notion that animation is nothing more than a genre targeted at kids when that couldn't be farther from the truth. And The Wild Robot is proof that animation absolutely has a place in today's day and age. It's not only the best film I've seen this year so far, but I also believe that this is the magnum opus of DreamWorks animation as a whole. It is the culmination of all their best attributes as a studio with some beautiful animation and a powerful story that'll break your heart before putting it back together through the relationships these characters build and the lengths they'll go to protect the ones they care about. If there's one movie this year that I'd consider an absolute must-watch, it's The Wild Robot, hands down. It's a film that has to be seen to be believed, and it's a showcase of how even if their output isn't always the best, DreamWorks can still make some incredible stuff. So is it worthy of the coveted 10 out of 10? Honestly, I'd say it is. It really is that good, and considering how the original book was turned into a trilogy, hopefully this won't be the last we'll see of Rosm Unit 7134. Next time, I'll be talking about Wolves. I know it's not common for me to talk about major streaming movies since I keep forgetting to do so, but I decided to give this one a watch, and I guess it was okay. Anyways, thanks for watching this episode of Isaac Reviews 2024, subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you all later.